epic and heroic images are appearing on your screen. It is one of the most famous and classic battles in history. Battle of Ham's Deep appears in the movie The Lord of the Rings. This is a work adapted based on the outstanding epic of the same name, born thanks to the creative mind and genius pen of writer J.R.R. Tolkien. But few people know that when author Tolkien wrote this ultimate battle, he took his ideas from a real battle in history. At the heart of the old continent, two armies, two faiths, two enemies will face off in a heroic battle that will decide the destiny of the entire Christian world. Will Jesus' cross stand, or will all have to rest before the crescent moon of St. Ala?
It will all be determined by the outcome of the battle that Lord Sauron will send to you and you today.
Battle of Vienna in 1683. In 1453, the Turkish Ottoman army under the leadership of Sultan Mehmed II defeated Constantinople and destroyed the Eastern Roman Empire. This proud victory is a surefire launch that will help them rise and officially enter the ranks of the most powerful empires not only in the Muslim world but also throughout human history. To learn details about that event, audiences can refer to the movie Rise of Empires Ottoman. From this point on, the Ottoman Empire officially became the strongest enemy, directly threatening the survival of Christian countries in the West. Their danger to Europe can be said to be no less than the Xiongnu or Mongol empires, especially in the context of European kingdoms being divided for their own interests without knowing how to unite against common enemy. After capturing Constantinople and turning it into the capital Istanbul, the Turks turned their eyes to the next red apple in their ambition to swallow Europe. That is the city of Vienna, the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, the heart of Europe. For those of you who don't know, the red apple is a metaphor in Turkish lore that refers to the great goals on their way to conquering the world. The first red apple was Constantinople, the bridge between the east and west halves of the world, the capital of Orthodoxy, one of the three main fasts of Christianity. This was followed by Vienna, the capital of the Holy Roman Empire, the heart of Europe, which retained control of the Danube as well as many other land transport arteries. Next was Rome, the seat of the Catholic See, and finally Moscow, the capital of the Russian Empire and the center of Orthodoxy after the fall of Constantinople. In 1529, the Ottoman Empire made its first attempt to capture Vienna. 100,000 territorial troops were mobilized to carry out a siege that lasted more than 2 weeks. However, they were unable to subdue the defense force, which had only 1/5 the number of troops, and had to retreat when winter came. More than 130 years later, the Ottoman Empire launched an invasion of the Grand Duchy of Austria, the most important domain of the Harburg imperial family that ruled the Holy Roman Empire, causing the Austro-Turkish War that lasted from 1663 to 1664. As a result, the Ottomans were defeated in a decisive battle at St. Gothard and forced to sign the Peace Treaty of Varsovia. Thanks to this document, the peace between the two empires lasted 20 years. However, during that time the seeds of war began to germinate. In 1676, Kara Mustafa Pasha, a nobleman famous for his warlike fanaticism and special hatred of Christianity, became the Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire. After taking office, he launched the country's war machine, repaired and built roads leading to the Holy Roman Empire, as well as transported weapons, ammunition and other resources from across the country to the Western Territories and the Balkan Peninsula. At the same time, the Ottoman Empire also provided military support to the group of Hungarian Protestants who rebelled against the rule of the Catholic Hardbug imperial family. With help from Turkey, the rebels quickly gained control of the highlands in Upper Hungary. In 1682, relations between the rebels and the Ottoman nation were upgraded to full-scale allies. In the same year, negotiations for the Varsovia Peace Treaty completely collapsed, signaling that the Ottoman dragon was preparing to once again attack Vienna. On January 2, 1683, the Ottoman Empire officially declared war on the Holy Roman Empire. However, it took the Turkish army a lot of time to gather forces in the border area, despite their many years of preparation for war. Explaining this, some historians believe that the Ottomans did not attack immediately because they did not want to repeat their defeat in the winter more than a century and a half ago. Unintentionally, that half-year enabled the Holy Roman Empire to seek support by signing the Warsaw Pact and establishing an alliance with Poland. By early April, the Ottoman Grand Army began to set out to punish. After capturing the city of Rab, the great general Kava Mustafa Pasha sent a letter to Sultan Mehmed IV, asking for permission to attack the capital of the pro-Holy Roman Empire while completely controlling the strongholds on the border. The reason for this haste comes from the fact that his general's chair is being violently bowed to domestic political opponents, and that winning the Vienna Red Apple back to Sultan will help Kava Mustafa Pasha strengthen and enhance your position. After 7 days of waiting without a response, Ottoman's general ordered his army to advance towards Vienna citadel. Receiving intelligence, the Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I appointed the Count of Starhemberg as commander-in-chief of the defenses. He then fled the city with his family and 80,000 people on July 7th. At this point, many people may blame the emperor is a coward, but the truth is that he also has his own problems. At that time, the Hardbergs did not have many members, and if Leopold and his 2 sons died, the clan would be almost extinct. Besides, looking at it positively, the fact that many people followed the emperor and left the city means that those who stayed regardless of nobles or commoners were prepared to die for their country. All the men who could fight included regular soldiers, executive officers and volunteer militiamen who were assembled by General Starhemberg into an army of about 10,000 men. They also had more than 300 cannons in hand, twice as many as the enemy. Along with that, the best military engineer in the empire at that time, George Rimpler, mobilized workers to work day and night to strengthen the city walls, turning the city into a giant fortress made of earth, stone, and steel. Everything is ready for a decisive battle for the destiny of all Europe. On July 14, 1683, Grand Chancellor Kara Mustafa Pasha brought 150,000 troops. Among these were 20,000 Ranise Sari army, the most elite fighters of Turkey. This army is considered the strongest and bravest of the Ottoman Empire in the past 150 years. However, the Ranise Sari army was not a Turk but originated as non-Muslim and healthy European boys in the Balkans. They were enslaved or sent into Ottoman families, had to convert to Islam, learn languages and customs, and live as a Turkey. After that, these children will have to go through an extremely harsh military training process to create skilled, disciplined, and highly united soldiers. They are also the force that forms the musketeer unit for the Sultans. Many people will wonder why elite soldiers are still the royal guard. Again, not from the natives themselves. The answer is because St. Allah's law prohibits enslaving Muslims, which is a bit of interesting information for your audience. And now we will return to the main content. On the same day, Vienna soldiers saw the cavalry, gunner Ranise Sari, artillery and long logistical vehicles, seemingly endless, of the Earth Army and its servants, when the news reached the ears of Polish King Yen III of the Sobieski family. Vienna called, Poland would answer without delay. He immediately gathered the army and prepared to leave to rescue the Allies. Meanwhile, in front of Vienna's walls, the Ottoman army had camped on the west side of the city. Realizing that the houses and surrounding construction works had been destroyed by the Austrians to create an anti-spread plane that could easily deploy fire, Kava Mustafa Pasha immediately ordered trenches to be dug straight towards the city, to protect your troops when attacking. On the 15th day, the great Prime Minister sent a fake country to bring an ultimatum to Vienna, asking the defense forces to abandon their weapons and surrender, convert to Islam, and from their pay tribute to the Ottoman Empire. Naturally, Starhemberg refused and the Turkish artillery began to roar. However, as mentioned, the number of Ottoman cannons is quite small, only about 150 guns, half that of the enemy. In addition, most of these guns are only of Class II caliber, while the walls of Vienna citadel, thanks to being very strongly reinforced, even heavy artillery is unlikely to be able to punch through if at a distance. Therefore, the Turkish army used the trench transportation system and rubble around Vienna to bring cannons closer to the city walls. Parallel to this, their engineers dug tunnels towards the fortifications southwest of the city. On July 16th, the heart of Europe was completely surrounded on 3 sides, east, west, and south, while the north direction is blocked by the Danube River. In a 4-way enemy situation, the defense force is forced to contact external allies by sending liaison officers to swim across the river, or, if confident and lucky enough, they can directly sneak past the enemy's running camp at night. Thanks to these brave soldiers, an information line, despite frequent congestion, was established. However, these efforts were not always successful, and many couriers were brutally captured and interrogated by the Ottoman army to exploit valuable information about the defenders. From July 24th to the end, the Turkish engineers continuously placed explosives to destroy Vienna's strongholds, paving the way for infantry units to conduct attacks and forcing the defenders to fight back fiercely. One of those bloody escorts took the life of genius engineer Rimla, the guardian and loyal subject of the Holy Roman Empire. When organizing a counterattack, the Vienna army also imitated tunneling and placing explosives but did not cause much damage. Meanwhile, Turkey proved to be much more effective when continuously knocking down enemy barriers. On July 30th, a massive explosion facilitated a deep thrust by the elite Rani's Sari forces approaching the fence in front of the watchtowers. Here, 30 Ottoman cannons were concentrated and many Vienna cannons were destroyed. However, the goalkeeper soldiers were still able to hold out and did not completely break up the battle. At the same time, the Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I was in Passau of Germany and tried restlessly to seek all help. Pope Innocent XI funded a large sum of money along with the budget approved by the Imperial General Assembly, and the emperor was able to mobilize relief forces from Bavaria and territories across the country. Receiving news of Charles V of Lorraine's military reinforcements and more than 30,000 soldiers under his command occupied and held positions northwest of Vienna, waiting for the opportunity to counterattack. By the time some good news reached the Roman Empire, on the other side of the front line, what Kara Mustafa Pasha was receiving was not pleasant at all. Sultan IV sent a letter questioning the general, why he arbitrarily attacked the enemy capital instead of supporting the uprising in Hungary and gaining control of the border fortresses. The letter from Sultan placed a 1,000-pound block of pressure on Kara Mustafa Pasha, forcing him to end the war at all costs and quickly. In addition, as if he did not have enough headaches, General Ottoman also had to face a serious decline in food scarcity and military morale due to the long siege. Meanwhile, the situation in Vienna is even worse. Prices of necessities such as food and medicine have skyrocketed, forcing the city government to impose the highest prices. In addition, piles of corpses piled as high as mountains and left untreated pose a high risk of disease outbreaks. However, the city's defenders still tried to maintain their morale, and every day there were still people brave enough to go out and communicate. To encourage them, the commanders offered a reward of 200 ducats equivalent to 100,000 up to 150,000 dola to anyone willing to accept the task. According to oral tradition, there was a Polish aristocrat, Kuchiki, who used the prize money as his liaison and the coffee beans left behind by the Ottoman army to open the first coffee shop in the capital of Roman city. On August 3rd, after endless attacks, the Turkish army captured most of Vienna's strongholds, forcing the soldiers to defend the city for free. There is no other choice but to retreat inside the watchtowers. Continuing the advance, the Ottomans expanded the trench system to overcome the ditch in front of the city wall. To cope, Vienna soldiers chose safe positions inside the lower fortifications to deploy firepower to attack enemy passages, and at the same time took advantage of piles of dirt and rocks torn down by explosions to build more blockhouses. But these efforts seem to be in vain, as the Turkish army is still closer than ever. When fierce fighting was breaking out outside, in the inner city diarrhea broke out and spread at breakneck speed, causing the deaths of many people. Even General Starr Hamburg almost became a victim. But luckily he got better after 10 days and continued to hold power only to cancel. To compensate for the number of soldiers killed by the Starr Hamburg epidemic, all men, regardless of age or health status, were ordered to hold guns to fight. Those who resist orders will face the death penalty. By August 15th, the trenches of the Ottoman army had been dug to the middle of the ditch. The soldiers of Vienna citadel, despite their numerical disadvantage, with a ratio of 1 to 15, without hesitation, opened an interception sortie and they gave the enemy heavy blows. They killed almost all the Turkish soldiers under the moats, destroyed the earth and stone fortifications, and neutralized all the explosive fruits that could be found. Before such a strong position and fighting force, the Ottoman army was repulsed, and it took 12 days to regain control of the lost positions. Over the next 2 weeks, despite many bloody skirmishes, both sides suffered equally heavy casualties, but at the same time neither side made any progress, causing the war to be pushed into a tug of war. However, from the beginning, Vienna's army numbers were extremely low compared to the enemy, so in reality they were facing many disadvantages. By the end of August and early September, the situation of the city's defenders had become extremely dangerous. All resources that General Starhemberg could mobilize were exhausted. Every night he fired flares from the top of the tower of San Stephen Cathedral to call on outside allies to come to reinforce him. But the response was just silence. But despite the despair that engulfed his mind and the high hunger that tore his guts, the soldiers of Vienna under Starhemberg remained resilient in their duties. They built additional lines behind the city walls and attacked and sabotaged enemy tunnels, but most failed. On September 3rd, Ottoman's passages arrived right at the foot of the city wall, at a depth of 2 to 3 meters, and fierce battles broke out both above the city and below ground. At the same time, in a town in the northwest of Vienna, Polish King Jan III of Sobieski joined forces with Duke Charles V of Lorraine and forces from Bavaria, along with many other armies throughout the Roman Empire whole. A council of war was established, and the King of Poland was elected commander-in-chief of the 70,000-strong reinforcements, which later became known as the Holy Alliance. While the relief troops were flying in the direction of Vienna, Ottoman's explosives destroyed a hole at the foot of the city wall and collapsed a watchtower that formed a slope leading to the top of the wall. The Vienna army quickly filled the hole and organized a fierce fight against the attacks. Because the slope's inclination was quite large, it was difficult for the Turkish army to advance with all its strength, but on the contrary, it made them easy targets for Vienna's bullets. After 2 hours of trying without results, Ottoman soldiers had to temporarily retreat. At that point, the tension over the days of fighting, which had now risen to its height, had discouraged even the strongest fighters of the Turkeys. However, they continued to launch attacks with similar tactics in the following days and were then repelled again like last time. Inside the city, the defense force only had about 4,000 people still trying. Hold position until the last breath. At this time, the belief that the relief army was very close was the only stimulant that helped these completely exhausted soldiers both physically and mentally still stand. On the other side of the front line, Kara Mustafa Pasha had also received intelligence about the Divine Alliance and understood she had little time left. On September 7th, Ottoman's general reorganized his force, placing 15,000 troops to continue the siege and 80,000 troops ready to fight the Christian army. At 4 a.m. on September 12, 1683, the Pro-Holy League army began an attack from the top of Kahlenberg Hill in the north of Vienna. Their left wing was assumed with the Holy Roman Imperial Army commanded by Duke Charles V. The center included warriors from the Holy Empire's city-states such as Bavaria and Saxony. The remaining right wing was the Polish army of King Jan III. Although gathered from many different forces, the Union army proved extremely strange. They maintained their formation without any haste but slowly moved down like a roller cart ready to crush anyone who dared to face it. After 6 hours of continuously repelling the enemy, most of the Union army approached Ottoman's barracks and prepared to stabilize the formation for the final attack. Why the majority? That's because it wasn't until this point that King Jan III decided to send cavalry into battle to create the final massacre. From the top of Kahlenberg Hill, 18,000 cavalry led by 3,000 Holy Winged Horsemen Hussa, famous for Poland, personally led by King Hui, began the assault. With angel wings behind them and 6 long lances in their hands, they rushed straight into the Ottoman formation like a hurricane and tore through the enemy ranks without fear. Terrible sounds rang out like falling mountains. Even though Turkish soldiers stood back to fight or ran away, there was only one lump waiting for them, which was death. Seeing that reinforcements had arrived and the enemy was being destroyed, all the pain and humiliation accumulated during the 2 months erupted into a fire of anger and gave strength to the soldiers of Vienna. From inside the city, they rushed out to fight and kill and push the enemy and the pincer movement with their coalition troops. By dusk, the outcome of the battle was decided, and the Ottomans fled in chaos like bees breaking their hives. The city of Vienna, the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, the heart of Europe, was saved. The day after the battle, Emperor Leopold I returned to Kindu and held a celebration. The Polish army rewarded itself with huge treasures left behind by the enemy. As for Charles V, he still doesn't seem to believe he won. On the 18th day, they began to set out to pursue the Ottoman army. On September 25th, Kara Mustafa Pasha, when fleeing to Belgrade, was granted death by Sultan by strangling him with a silk rope as punishment for this disgraceful defeat. The glorious victory at Vienna in 1683 created a turning point in the hundreds of years of conflict between the Ottoman Empire and Europe. From this point on, the Christian alliance began to regain most of the previously lost territories, and the Ottomans had to end their expansion. This battle was also the opening shot for the Ottoman imperial defeats in the Turkish Great War that lasted more than a decade later, leading to the revolt of their European vassals. Along with that is the expulsion of Islam from these countries. Particularly for Poland, the victory of the winged riders of Husta is an eternal pride for each person of the country to this day. And King Yen III Sobieski became the famous hero of all Europe's saviors. Thank you for watching. Please press the subscribe button to motivate me to release more videos next. Thank you.
Lord Sauron.